At my son's 7th birthday party, my wealthy ex-in-laws mocked the simple, homemade gift I brought him. Then, my son unwrapped it. A stunned silence fell over the room. Before we get to the party, I'd love to know, what city are you watching from today? And be sure to subscribe for our daily stories. Okay, let's head to that party. In the quiet, dusty, and sun-drenched space of my small studio apartment, I was a king. Here, with the familiar, comforting scent of charcoal and linseed oil in the air, I was a creator of worlds, a master of light and shadow. But the moment I stepped out of that studio and into the real world, I was a failure. My divorce from Megan 2 years ago had not just been the end of a marriage, it had been a public and humiliating trial of my worth as a man. And in the eyes of her wealthy, powerful, and deeply judgmental parents, Frank and Helen, I had been found severely wanting. They had never approved of my choice to be an artist, a profession, as my ex-father-in-law had once called it, for dreamers and deadbeats. And now that I was no longer their son-in-law, they had made it their personal mission to prove to my own son, Sam, that his father was a nobody. Their weapon of choice was money. They would buy him the latest video game consoles, the most expensive sneakers, the kinds of extravagant, shiny objects that I, with my meager and inconsistent income from the occasional portrait commission, could never hope to afford. They weren't just spoiling their grandson. They were trying to buy his love, to prove to him that their world of wealth and status was better, more exciting, and more valuable than my own quiet world of art and creativity. But today was my son's 7th birthday, and for the last 3 months, I had been pouring all of my time, all of my talent, and all of my heart into creating a gift for him that I knew they could never compete with. It was not a toy. It was a masterpiece, the single greatest thing I had ever created. A life-sized, photorealistic, and emotional charcoal portrait of my son, a portrait that had captured not just his likeness, but his very soul. As I was carefully wrapping the large canvas in simple, brown craft paper that morning, my phone rang. It was my ex-wife, Megan. Her voice was full of that familiar, weary impatience. "Ryan, please don't be late for Sam's party," she began, her voice already a sigh. "My parents have gone all out this year." "I won't be late," I said. "And please," she continued, her voice now a low, pleading, insulting thing, "please tell me you got him a real present this year, not another one of your, drawings. He's 7 now. He wants toys, not art." I just closed my eyes. "I have to go, Megan," I said quietly. "I'll see you at the party." I looked at the simply wrapped canvas that was leaning against my wall. It was the best thing I had ever created, a piece of my own heart, a testament to my profound and unending love for my son. And to my ex-wife and her parents, it was just a drawing, a worthless second-rate gift from a worthless second-rate father. I had no idea that in just a few short hours, in a room filled with their richest, most powerful, and most important friends, that simple and deeply personal drawing was about to become the most valuable and the most humiliating object they had ever seen.
I drove to my ex-in-law's house, the large, simply wrapped canvas secured in the passenger seat beside me. Their home, a sprawling McMansion-style palace in the wealthiest part of the suburbs, was a world away from my own small, paint-splattered studio. It was a world I had once been a part of, and a world that had, since my divorce from their daughter, Megan, made it abundantly and painfully clear that I was no longer welcome. The party was already in full swing when I arrived. The backyard was an explosion of extravagant, performative wealth. There was a bouncy castle the size of a small house, a hired magician making balloon animals, and a mountain of presents so large it almost obscured the view of the Olympic-sized swimming pool. It was the kind of over-the-top, ridiculously expensive birthday party that only a 7-year-old with grandparents who were trying to prove a point could have. I walked through the crowd of well-dressed, chattering guests, my own simple paint-stained jeans and the large brown paper-wrapped canvas in my hand making me feel like an alien from another planet. My son, Sam, saw me and ran over, his face alight with a pure, uncomplicated joy. "Dad, you're here!" "Happy birthday, buddy," I said, handing him the gift. "This is for you." He took it, his eyes wide with a happy curiosity. But before he could even begin to open it, my ex-father-in-law, Frank, swooped in, a glass of expensive scotch in his hand and a booming, false cheerfulness in his voice. "Ryan, glad you could make it," he said, clapping me a little too hard on the back. "Sam, my boy, why don't you put that thing over there with the rest of the real presents?" he said with a loud, conspiratorial wink to one of his golf buddies. "Grandpa and Grandma have a few surprises for you that are a little more exciting than another one of your dad's projects." I just smiled, a tight, practiced smile I had perfected over the last 2 years. I was not here to fight with them. I was not here to make a scene. I was here for my son. I was here to watch him open his presents, to see his face light up, to be a father. This was my silent sacrifice. I would endure their quiet and not so quiet humiliations. I would swallow my own pride again and again for the simple and priceless gift of being a part of my son's life. My ex-mother-in-law, Helen, was next. She glided over, her face a mask of polite, condescending sympathy. "Ryan, dear," she said, her voice a low, confidential purr, "it's so good of you to come." She looked at my simply wrapped canvas, which I had placed on the far edge of the gift table, and she sighed, a small, sad, and perfectly performative sound. "I do hope you didn't spend too much on that. We all know how difficult things have been for you lately." "It's a gift from the heart, Helen," I said quietly. "Yes, well, that's lovely. But you can't pay the rent with heart, can you?" I spent the next hour in a state of quiet, invisible agony, a ghost at my own son's birthday party. I watched as he was showered with a mountain of expensive plastic and ultimately meaningless toys. I watched as my ex-in-laws paraded him around, a living, breathing testament to their own wealth and generosity. And I watched as a quiet, distinguished-looking older gentleman, a man I vaguely recognized as one of Frank's oldest and most respected friends, a man named Mr. Harrison, occasionally glance over at my own forgotten gift, a look of quiet, professional curiosity in his sharp, intelligent eyes.
Finally, the time came for the main event, the opening of the presents. Sam sat in a large, throne-like chair, surrounded by a mountain of brightly colored boxes. He opened his grandparents' gifts first, of course, the newest and most expensive video game console, a giant 1,000-piece Lego set of a spaceship, a remote-controlled drone. With each gift, the crowd of assembled guests would ooh and ah, my ex-in-laws beaming with a proud proprietary pride. And then, after all the shiny, expensive boxes had been opened, my ex-father-in-law, Frank, walked over to the gift table and picked up my own large, flat, and very simple brown paper-wrapped gift. He held it up for the entire party to see. "And now," he announced, his voice a booming and condescending laugh that was designed to be the final killing blow of my public humiliation, "let's see what kind of a masterpiece your starving artist of a father has brought for you this year, Sam." I watched as my son took the simple brown paper package, his own face now a little embarrassed by the laughter of the crowd. My heart was pounding in my chest. This was it, the moment of my greatest vulnerability and my greatest act of a father's love. He tore at the simple brown craft paper, his small hands working with a child's eager impatience. The paper fell away, revealing the canvas beneath. And the world went silent. The polite, dismissive chatter of the party did not just quieten, it stopped. The laughter died in the throats of Frank's golf buddies. A sudden, profound, confused silence fell over the entire, sun-drenched backyard. The guests, who had been expecting to see a clumsy, childish drawing, a pathetic homemade trinket, were now confronted with something else entirely, something they did not, in their world of stocks and bonds and expensive material things, have a category for. It was a portrait of my son. But it was more than that. It was him. I had spent 3 months in the quiet, lonely hours after my own son was asleep, working on this piece. I had used a rare and difficult Renaissance technique of charcoal and white chalk on a toned gray paper, and I had poured every ounce of my talent, every memory of his changing 7-year-old face, every single solitary drop of my father's love into it. I had captured the wild, intelligent spark in his eyes, the small, almost imperceptible chip in his front tooth from his first ever bicycle crash, the faint, beautiful spray of freckles across his nose that only appeared in the summer. It was not just a drawing. It was a living, breathing, profoundly and intimately known soul staring out from a piece of paper. My son, Sam, was the first one to speak. He just stared at the portrait, his own eyes wide with a quiet, wondrous awe. He reached out a small, hesitant finger and gently touched the cheek of the boy in the drawing. "Wow," he whispered. His voice was a small, reverent sound in the dead, silent yard. "Dad, it's me." I watched as my ex-in-laws, Frank and Helen, just stared. Their own smug, mocking smiles now vanished, replaced with a look of stunned, uncomfortable disbelief. They did not understand art, not really, but they understood power. And they could feel the strange and undeniable and unsettling power of the object their failure of an ex-son-in-law had just brought into their perfect, orderly world. It was then that the quiet, distinguished-looking older gentleman I had noticed earlier, Mr. Harrison, began to move. He walked through the silent, parted crowd, his movements slow and deliberate, his eyes, the eyes of a true connoisseur, fixed on the portrait with an expression of pure, unadulterated, professional awe. He knelt down beside my son, ignoring everyone else, and he just looked.
"My God, young man," he finally said, his voice a low, reverent whisper that seemed to be directed not at me, but at the drawing itself. This is extraordinary." He looked up at me then, and there was no condescension in his eyes. There was only the pure, clean respect of one true artist for another. "The technique is flawless. The emotional depth, the way you have captured this child's very essence, it is a masterpiece." He then stood up and turned to face me. "I am a collector, Ryan," he said, his voice now a little louder for the whole silent party to hear. "And this is one of the finest contemporary portraits I have seen in a decade. I have a space in my collection next to a small, early Lucian Freud where this would be perfect." He then did something that shattered the last remaining vestiges of my ex-in-law's entire and carefully constructed world. "I will give you $50,000 for it," he said, his voice a simple, clear, and absolute statement of fact. "Right here, right now." The silence that followed was a different kind of silence. It was a silence filled with the sound of 24 wealthy, shocked jaws hitting the perfectly manicured lawn. Frank and Helen just stared, their faces a ruin of pure, abject, and glorious horror. The worthless drawing, the quaint little project from their starving artist, ex-son-in-law, had just been valued at more than the brand-new luxury SUV they had so proudly and so loudly given their grandson for his birthday. I looked not at the collector. I looked not at my stunned and beautifully, wonderfully humiliated ex-in-laws. I looked at my son. My beautiful, wonderful son, who was now looking up at me, his own eyes shining with a new and profound pride. I then turned to Mr. Harrison. "Thank you, sir," I said, and my own voice was a calm and steady and satisfied instrument. "I am truly and honored by your offer." I then looked back at my son, and I smiled. "But I'm afraid this piece is not for sale." My son, Sam, just looked from the kind old collector's face to the portrait and then up to me, his own face a picture of pure, childish pride. The complex adult world of money and status was a foreign country to him. All he knew was that his father, the man who had made him this beautiful, magical picture of himself, was being celebrated, and that was enough. I looked at my ex-in-laws, Frank and Helen, the masters of this small, cruel universe, and I watched as their entire world, a world built on the simple and flawed equation of money equals worth, was turned completely and beautifully upside down. The worthless drawing from the failure ex-son-in-law was now the most valuable and the most talked about object at their own ridiculously expensive party. Their faces were a symphony of pure, abject, and satisfying horror. But it was my ex-wife, Megan, whose reaction was the most profound. She was not looking at the money. She was looking at the art. She was looking at the portrait of her son, and for the first time, she was seeing not just a drawing, but the profound and intimate love of a father for his child, a love she knew in that moment that all her parents' money could never, ever buy. The silence was finally broken by Mr. Harrison, the collector, who just chuckled, a low, warm, and appreciative sound. "I see," he said, looking at me, his eyes twinkling with a new profound respect. "The piece is not for sale. A man of integrity, as well as a man of talent. Even better."
He reached into the pocket of his expensive suit jacket and pulled out a simple, elegant business card. "The offer stands, young man," he said, pressing the card into my hand. "Should you ever change your mind? And," he added, his voice now a low, conspiratorial whisper, "if you have any other projects you would be willing to part with, you will call me first." He then gave a small, formal nod to my stunned ex-in-laws and walked away, leaving a crater of pure, social devastation in his wake. The party, for all intents and purposes, was over. The guests, who had just witnessed the most delicious and most humiliating social drama of the year, began to make their excuses and leave, their own faces full of a quiet, gossipy glee. My ex-father-in-law, Frank, was the first to recover, his own mind clearly scrambling to try and co-opt my victory, to reclaim some small, pathetic piece of his own shattered pride. "Ha!" he boomed, his voice a false and unconvincing sound of cheerfulness, as he walked over and clapped me on the back. "Can you believe it? My son-in-law, ex-son-in-law, a real hidden talent. We always knew he had it in him, didn't we, Helen?" I didn't answer him. I just gave him a quiet, pitying look, a look that was more devastating and more dismissive than any angry words could ever be. I then turned to my son. "What do you say, buddy? Ready to go home?" He just nodded, his own small hand now clutching the corner of his new, priceless portrait. As we were walking away, my ex-wife, Megan, caught up to us at the edge of the lawn. "Ryan," she said, her voice a small, quiet, unfamiliar thing.
It was the voice I had not heard in years. It was the voice of the woman I had first fallen in love with, before her parents' money and their influence had poisoned her. I'm sorry," she whispered, her eyes fixed on the ground, "for what I said on the phone, for all of it." She then looked up at the portrait of her son in my hands. It's the most beautiful thing I have ever seen." "I know," I said quietly. And then I turned and walked away, my son at my side. We were almost at my car when he stopped me one last time. It was Mr. Harrison. He had been waiting for me by the gate. "I was serious, young man," he said, his voice now full of a new and very real excitement. "I believe you are a major, undiscovered talent. I have a great many friends in the art world, friends who would be very, very interested to see your work." He smiled, a real, genuine, transformative smile. "I would like to offer you a solo exhibition at my own private gallery in the city. A full professional show. I will handle all the expenses. All you have to do is paint." I looked at the most powerful and most respected man in the entire city's art world, a man who was now offering me the one single and impossible dream I had thought was dead and buried forever. I had come to this party a starving artist, a failed father in their eyes, a man with nothing but a simple homemade gift. Now I was leaving with my son's love, with my ex-wife's long overdue respect, and with the key to a future I had never, in my wildest, most fantastic dreams, thought possible. My ex-in-laws wanted to humiliate me. They had no idea they had just, in their own blind and deeply arrogant cruelty, launched my entire career. The car ride home was a beautiful one. My son, Sam, was buzzing with a new and wonderful energy. "Dad," he said, his voice full of a pure, childish awe, "that man said your drawing was a masterpiece. He said you were a real artist." "He did, buddy," I said, a slow, real, happy smile spreading across my own face. "Are we rich now?"
I just laughed, a real, genuine, and carefree sound that I hadn't made in years. "No, buddy," I said, looking at my wonderful, beautiful son. "We're not rich. We're something better. We're artists." The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of activity, a journey into a world I had only ever dreamed of. I called Mr. Harrison. He was as good as his word. He became more than a patron. He became my mentor. He introduced me to a world of gallery owners, of critics, of fellow artists. And my work, the work that my own family had dismissed as a hobby, was suddenly and beautifully seen. I was not a starving artist anymore. I was an emerging one. My ex-wife, Megan, and I found a new and better kind of peace. The divorce had been bitter, poisoned by her parents' influence. But now, with their power over her diminished by their own public humiliation, she was a different person. She was the woman I had first fallen in love with, and she became a true and respectful co-parent to our son. The final and most satisfying chapter of my own quiet revenge happened 3 months later, at the opening night of my first solo exhibition at Mr. Harrison's private and very exclusive downtown gallery. The room was packed with the city's most important and influential people, and my work, my art, my soul was on the walls, celebrated. My ex-in-laws, Frank and Helen, showed up, of course. They were not invited, but they came anyway. They approached me, their faces a mask of a false, fawning pride. "Ryan, my boy," Frank had boomed, a little too loudly, "we always knew you had it in you. We are so, so proud of you. In fact," he had added, "Helen and I were just talking about how the family should make a significant investment in your next series of paintings." I just looked at them, at their pathetic, transparent attempt to co-opt my success, to rewrite the history of their own cruelty, and I did not feel anger. I just felt the quiet, liberating sense of pity. "Frank, Helen," I said, my voice polite, but firm, and loud enough for the people standing nearby to hear. "Thank you for coming, but you are no longer my family, and you will not be investing in my work." I then turned my back on them and walked away, leaving them standing there, finally and completely irrelevant. The centerpiece of the entire exhibition, the one piece that was not for sale, was the portrait of my son. It hung on the main wall, a testament to the love that had started this entire unbelievable journey. I stood with my son, Sam, in front of it at the end of the night, the gallery now quiet and empty. "You know," I said to him, "your grandparents were right about one thing. They always tried to teach you that a man's worth is measured by the value of his gifts." I looked at the portrait, at the worthless drawing that had changed my entire life. But on one beautiful and deeply satisfying afternoon, a simple piece of charcoal and paper taught them a lesson they will never, ever forget. I looked at my son, at his happy, smiling face, and concluded that the most valuable thing a father can ever give his son is a gift that is truly and completely priceless. An absolutely brilliant story of a father's love and a talent that could not be denied. What a perfect and satisfying reversal of fortune. What do you think of Ryan's final words to his ex-in-laws at the gallery? Let us know in the comments below. If you were cheering for Ryan's success, please show your support by hitting that like button, and be sure to subscribe for more incredible stories of karmic justice. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.